Hi, welcome to this webinar, and thank you for joining this session. This is part of the DSA Global Summit, and we are very glad to have here today ISOC, and we are going to have a great discussion about developing a framework for rural LTE connectivity in Buenos Aires, Cauca, in Colombia. So this is a project that has been being developed for many years, and we are seeing great interest from the community, and we are going to hear directly from Lilian Chamorro and from Jane Coffin about that project. So with that introduction and from DSA, we are very glad to have you here. Thank you for organizing this session.
Thank you, Marta, and we're so excited to be joining DSA for this great opportunity to talk about community networks and what we're seeing not only last year, but this year, and this excellent project that our colleagues at Colnodo are working on, and Lilian will tell us more. But we just wanted to give a bit of a framework for this, and just to let everybody know that we see that some CNs that we work with, community networks, have been the unsung heroes of the pandemic. They've been helping communities everywhere around the world to stay safe, with their sources of income, because they can work online from home, the kids can study, they can provide information about pandemics through message boards in the communities, and of course provide connectivity. They provide innovation, which is really important right now for people to be busy and to think of ways that they can do something and make progress. And through this innovation in the community network space, they're allowing for more CNs to look at the availability of unlicensed spectrum, and to work with other partners like the Internet Society, with DSA, with the APC, with others like different development organizations like CEDA and FCDO. And we're seeing advances that our partners in the community network space are making with governments and with these organizations I just named. Some of those successes right now where partners have come together to help obtain more unlicensed spectrum is Brazil. We've seen the advances that they've made in the 6 gigahertz band. The US has loosened up some spectrum in the 6 gigahertz band, and other countries in the Latin America, Caribbean region, 4 of them are dedicating full 6 gigahertz for Wi-Fi. And Marta will probably tell you more about that during the summit. But we just wanted to say that we really appreciate all the work that's going on in the LAC region. Other successes that we've seen during the pandemic, where countries are looking at providing more spectrum for services, very quickly, by the way, we should say. We've seen processes move so much faster. Bureaucratic processes have become more lightweight. They've been a bit more agile. And so this is something that we see happening during the pandemic that we really hope can be a trend moving forward after the pandemic. So I would also just say the importance of the work that DSA is doing as a partner with the Internet Society and others. We just really want to say thank you, because the work has been really important for change. It's been helping people connect better. We're looking at innovation for complementary networks to come in, and just more agility in getting services up and running through the work that DSA has been doing. So I'm going to finish up and just say that with this theme of change, we all are working on this together, whether it's through spectrum, more agile licensing, or looking at changing universal service. This cooperative way we're working and collaborative way is really important. So thank you all for those of you that are doing this work. And now we're going to get to the really great part of the video, is to hear more from Lilian about the work that she's doing. And I'm not going to try and pronounce the name of the city where she's working, because I will probably not say it properly. So I'm going to turn it over to Lilian Chamorro about a great project that Colnodo, one of the key partners of ours and many, are working on in Colombia. So Lilian, over to you.
Well, thank you, Jane and Marta, for the invitation. As Jane said, I work with Colnodo, that is an NGO in Colombia who work for more than 20 years in ICT for development in our country in different regions. And now I'm going to talk about Red Ink, that is a project that began in 2017 in a rural community located in the southwest of Colombia over the mountain range. This is a very diverse community where indigenous people, Afro-Colombian and peasants share a rich territory that met to discuss about the lack of telecommunication services in their area and in the context of the peace process in Colombia. At the same time, in that year, we from Colnodo knew about the experience of indigenous community telecommunications in Mexico, that together with other organizations like Rizomática and Red DSA, were working in communities in Oaxaca in the implementation of their own mobile 2G networks, using free software and social models for the implementation of the networks. Then we had the chance to speak with some people from Buenos Aires and tell them about this experience and about this possibility. And they agreed to work on a pilot on their territory to test this kind of networks. What they wanted basically were to have telecommunication services because they didn't have any kind of cell phone network in their territory, in order to improve the security and as well to facilitate familiar or productivity activities. Then we began to talk with the government, first with the National Spectrum Agency, and then with the ICT Ministry in order to define the best frequency and the best way to access to the spectrum. We think at the first moment in obtain an experimental license to use the spectrum. But the problem was that at that moment, the experimental license were so expensive and it was just oriented to test technology. Then it was for a short time and it was so expensive. Then we started to review other possibilities and we decided to make an agreement together, Colnodo and the ICT Ministry. And it took more than a year to build this kind of agreement and complete it and get approval and sign the agreement. It was signed at the beginning of 2019. And we have worked with the community. We have been working with the community in some tests during that time and some previous implementations. But then in 2019, we could start the project. It took a little longer than we expected because we have to test the equipment, we have to create some infrastructure, especially electrical infrastructure, because in that area the electrical network works so bad. Then we need to put different solutions and also solar panels and batteries and this kind of infrastructure additionally to the network infrastructure. But we could start the testing of the network in September in September in that year, in 2019, with 3 base stations, 2G with 2G technology. Finally, we put in operation the network in February in 2020, just before the start of the shutdowns because the pandemic. Then many people of the community began to use the network to make calls, send SMS. The agreement was initially for 1 year, but then was extended until approximately October in 2020. During that period, despite the security situation that was difficult also in that area, people was working all the time, trying to have a better service and a better opportunities to connect other people in the territory. It was a complex period because also the technical and organizational situation was difficult. It was hard to move from outside to inside the territory, and also in the territory. People couldn't move in the territory because the pandemic, but we could have the network in operation. But the agreement finally in October of the last year, the agreement ends and we have to shut down the network. At the beginning of 2020, a new regulation for experimental license was available in Colombia. It was designed for testing of 5G networks. Then we take advantage of this new regulation to have an experimental license for at least 6 months more to continue with the operation of the network. We asked to the ministry for this new permission to continue with the operation. However, we have not yet a response to this request. Now we are working in a proposal for the sandbox, for the regulatory sandbox of the Communication Regulation Commission, the CRC in Colombia, and well, that is the project in which we are working now in order to continue with the network, and also to maybe study the regulation and try to make some change in the regulation to adapt for this kind of community networks. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lillian. I just wanted to draw out one point that you were making. It was really important. You had to stop the network from operating during a very critical time on the planet during the pandemic. And just for clarification, the reason that you had to stop was due to the fact that the experimental licenses deadline, the timing had run out on the license. Is that correct?
Yes, because we were using the frequency because we had an agreement with the ministry. We didn't ask for the experimental for this first part of the project. We didn't have the experimental license because the cost and the time. We couldn't use the experimental license. Then we make the agreement, but the agreement finished in October 2020. And the spectrum was used not in a name of Colnodo or the community. It was just because the ICT ministry was part of the agreement. Then when the agreement finished, we have to shut down. It's okay. The equipment. Then because now there is a new opportunity to have an experimental license with different conditions, because we can ask for a license for 6 months with the opportunity to extend it for 1 or 12 months. Then we are asking now for an experimental license.
That's great.
Yes, but we don't have the answer for this request that we did.
Okay, so there was no way they could give you what I would call like a bridging license from the October to whenever they give you the new one. You had to shut down the operations.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this is a really good lesson learned about maybe working with the regulator in the sandbox to create a more flexible, how you do an interim solution or a follow-on to a deadline so that you don't have to shut down the network. I think the really good thing is that there's a lot of demand. How many people were connected in that area in Buenos Aires, Cauca?
It was almost 100 people connected, yes, to the network. But many other people was waiting also to connect and are asking for use the network, but now they can't. But many other people in the area want to use the network. It also at that time when the network was working, the problem was that people who was leading the organizative things and those things couldn't move in the territory. Then it was so hard also try to, yes, to inform to the people and talk with the people in other communities, different communities about the network. Then some people knew about the project and knew about the network, but it was not so easy, yes, to have meetings, for example, or yes, or trainings with the people. Then yes, we hope now that this is more opportunity to move in the territory, could be easier to subscribe new people for the network.
And it also sounds, Lillian, like if that network had been up and running, you could do more to help people because they could talk to each other across the network,
Yes.
particularly during the pandemic, and you could improve the network and provide more and more connectivity if you had been connected. So it does show the power of having these local community networks in places where cost can be brought down with the type of network you're deploying. Do you have any advice for the people that might be listening, for the regulators and the ministries, about what would help small community networks do what you do better, or make it easier for you to do your work?
Yes, we think it's very important. For example, now with the sandbox, we think this is a mechanism that provide us the opportunity to talk with different people from the ICT Ministry, of the Spectrum Agency, and try to show what is the difference between a community network and other operators and other commercial operators, because each community network is different. Now you cannot have a unique model. It's not a unique model of the community network. Each community create their own rules, financial models, organizative models, and then maybe sometimes for regulators it is not so easy to understand. Then what we want now is in the agreement, in the pilot that we did with the ICT Ministry, we tried to explain this to the ICT Ministry, and they tried to understand. But I think we have now the chance to show different models, different ways, and also because it is like all the time communities test how work this model, how work this financial solution. Maybe we can change some things and maybe it could work better. Then I think the regulation should be very flexible and understand that the conditions, the context is very different. Could be in the same country, but with different situations in each region. Yes.
Well, it also sounds like, and this is my last question for you, it sounds like there is a way to replicate the model with the way you go about building that community and bringing people together. And that might be something for the ministry and the regulator to see, that you're working on a model of community building in order to build a network. Does that sound right? Where you could replicate the way you approach community versus the type of network, perhaps?
Yes, I think there are some things that we can replicate. We have a methodology to work with the communities, and it's a space for discussion, for understand their own context, for understand their own territory, and then suggest a model. No, but it's not a model that we bring to the community. It's not that we say this is the model that you have to put. It's like, okay, we have to understand our conditions, context, and then we can see what is the best way to have a community network here. Then I think there are some things that we can reuse, but also we need a very flexible regulation, because, for example, sometimes maybe it could be peasant association or a cooperative, or maybe it's an indigenous group that in Colombia we call cabildos indígenas. Yes, that is a legal structure for indigenous people, but maybe it's just collective of networks. Yes, then it's not the same. I don't know how to say it. It's not the same. Yes, organization in all the times. También, excuse me. Also because sometimes it's just voluntary work. Is not, there is not any money involved, no, in the operation of the network. But in other cases, yes, we need some support of the people, some small money that people bring each month. Then it's different in each process, in each community. Then I think it's important to understand that.
Lillian, one more question for you. Can you give some of the DSA audience a little bit more information about what type of technology you're using in the network? I think you've got some interesting models that you're using, and it might be good for them to hear about what that is.
Yes. Well, in the first part of the project, we were using 2G. But now for the sandbox, we are proposing to have also LTE. Then the idea is to have access to other frequencies and also test a different technology. We are working with people from Mexico that also are working in this kind of solutions, and trying to test also some LTE equipment for the network. That is the idea, because for the people it's very, very important to have access to internet, and they speak. They told us about the importance that for them to have data in the network. Then that is the idea.
Thank you very much, because this is going to be a great opportunity for people to hear more about the project you and the others have been working on. And we thank you very much. And we appreciate the great work that Colnodo is doing with the communities to provide connectivity for some places for the first time. And I think this fits in really well with the DSA Summit, because it's a great opportunity to talk about how to look at innovative ways to provide spectrum to small startup networks like community networks. So thank you very much. And I think we're going to turn back to Marta so she can tell us a little bit more about how this will work with respect to the summit and where we can find these recordings, things like that.
Thank you very much, Jane and Lillian. It was very exciting to hear about this project. I have to say that part of the goal of the DSA Summit and about having these conversations is finding the right frameworks, understanding that regulators have a lot of limitations of legal requirements, and also that communities have needs, and they could organize themselves, and there are solutions that could provide that connectivity. So this is still an open discussion. The same way that every community is different, the regulations in every country regarding spectrum management are different. So that's why it requires a lot of open mind and flexibility for spectrum management frameworks. So thank you very much, ISOC, for this presentation, Jane and Lillian. And yeah, if you like what you're hearing, if you would like to hear more about what's going on worldwide and the best practices and the good models that we are implementing in different regions, please follow the DSA Summit. All the presentations will be online. And you still have time to register, because we are publishing this today and we will start the DSA Summit tomorrow, June 8. So thank you for your attention, and please keep in touch. Bye-bye.